Welcome to Freedom Motivated with Christina Whiteley, the podcast that empowers you to live life on your terms. Are you uninspired, bored, and unhappy with where life has taken you, and yearning for a life filled with purpose and passion? Look no further. We are here to ignite that fire within, to awaken your true potential, and to guide you on a journey towards absolute freedom. Join us as we delve into the minds of incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders from very different backgrounds with incredible stories. Be inspired by their resilience and learn from their challenges they faced along the path to success. These are the brave individuals who fight every day to awaken people to the power of self-responsibility and who inspire them to create a life they are absolutely in love with. Each episode will explore the concept of conscious income creation, building a business or creating a career that aligns with your unique skill set, purpose, values, and belief system. Discover the strategies, tips, and invaluable insights shared by our guests as they guide you towards making a living doing what you love. It's time to break free from the shackles of conformity and embrace the freedom that awaits. Are you ready to take control of your life? Are you ready to step into the life you've always dreamed of? Then welcome to Freedom Motivated, the podcast that will ignite your spirit and unleash your potential. All right. We are here for my podcast. We just rebranded this podcast to Freedom Motivated because initially we started with Beyond Balance, and I wanted to teach people how to create a life beyond the balance that most people seek. But really over the last couple of years, putting a focus on freedom, whether it is, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of business, financial freedom, health freedom, all of those things are encompassed. And when it comes to doing business, it's really important that you have alignment. I am so excited to have this conversation today with my friend, Ian Lenhart. He is incredible. I actually met him a few years back. We both were involved in the same company, and we were working hard to help other people build businesses from home, use healthcare, like healthy products in their home, improve their health, do things that are really positive in this world when everyone was really concerned about their health, right? And Ian has gone on to do some pretty incredible stuff. And I'm really excited to share that with you and talk about how he's created a really incredible lifestyle for himself, focusing on the things that are in alignment and with purpose. And so, Ian, I would just love to kind of open it up today and allow you to tell your story and share with everybody who you are and what you do, and we'll get going from there. How does that sound?
Let's do it. And even before that, I just want to congratulate you because you let out some pretty exciting news recently on Facebook.
I did. We've been trying for a long time. If you knew my daughter, so our daughter Isabella is 7, and every Christmas, every birthday, she asks for a baby. Every time we go on a date night, she says, "Come back with a baby in your belly." She has always wanted to be a big sister, and we've had some struggles in that area. I'm not going to lie, and I think a lot of people do, and for various reasons, it happens all over. But we continue to hold out hope and look for solutions. And now I'm pregnant with a baby boy, so I'm very, very excited. We're gonna have a little Mexican baby.
Well, you're an inspiration and you're an absolute social media tycoon. So congratulations. Every time I go on social media, I see Christina, you're rocking, you're rolling, you're doing everything by the book. And more importantly, you're living life on your own command. You moved to Cabo. Like when I think about the amount of people that have moved to another country and just set up shop and did that successfully, it's very few people, and you did it. And that takes courage. So, you motivate all of us, but thank you so much for letting me join the podcast. I love the rebrand, Freedom Motivated. I think that's what we all want. We all want it. When you don't have any sort of financial freedom or any sort of money, all you can think about is trying to get money, right?
Yeah.
It's like Naval Ravikant. I always butcher his last name, but he's the CEO of AngelList. He says that everyone needs to get rich because you need to get rich to find out that it's not what makes you happy.
Absolutely.
But you can't tell someone who's dirt broke that money's not going to make them happy, right? But clearly money's not the answer, relationships and people. But being able to use money to create freedom, to be able to do all the things that you want to do is the goal. And I just love that your entire podcast encompasses that. And it's so in line with what you do. So little background, I've been in the network marketing field for a decade plus. That's actually what opened the door to the entrepreneur roller coaster. I think everybody in their mind should get into direct sales as early as possible. It's the best education. It's the best essentially real world experience and dipping your toes into entrepreneurship that you'll ever get. And I'm really grateful I got into that. Alongside, I've been involved in the tech world and working for various tech companies. The thing I'm most proud of is I was the first employee with a facial recognition startup called TrueFace, and scaled and built that up, worked for free for almost a year and a half just for pure equity. Eventually, we were acquired by a company called Pangeum at about 30, 40 plus people. And that was really awesome because being able to go through a startup and successfully see it through acquisition, I learned a lot of just about like the behind the scenes of the tech world and how unorganized, and I don't say this to bash the company, but how crazy and chaotic running a business is. You know what I'm saying, Christina?
Yeah, 100%. And it's so interesting. I love that you said get into direct sales. Like, not only is that a low bar to entry, right? Because people spend hundreds of dollars, that like maybe $1,000 getting into a direct sales company, but when you start a business, like that's tens of thousands, hundreds of, sometimes millions of dollars to start a business. And not everybody has that opportunity. What I love about direct sales is that there's like no bar to entry, right? Anybody can do it, any race, any color, any nationality, any language that you speak. You have this opportunity to learn for free while you make money. I remember having that conversation with Lisa Grossman. And, I also want to, for those of us that are in this industry and you're listening for today, we had a huge loss this last week with Jessie Lee, and that's a really great example. Like, this woman lived with her heart open. She served people. She made millions of dollars. She helped lots of people make money. And money isn't everything. Money is not everything, and it doesn't solve all your problems. Absolutely. But when you have money, you have other options. I know that she's flown around the world and seen the best doctors, even with the grim, what do you call it? That she had diagnosis. Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. I'm going to blame it on the pregnancy. Okay. Like, as I start to forget things. But like, she had all the opportunity to see the best of the best. And we don't know why people are taken like that, but man, it really makes me want to live wholly, like fully and wholly, fully right now. And here's another thing. And I love that you said this, you work for free for almost a year at this startup. How many people are willing to work for free to learn skills, to grow business, right? Like I always said, if you want to get good at something, if you want to master something, go find a master and offer to work for free. That's what you need to do, right? So tell me a little bit more about what you're up to, like how things are going right now. Like, I know that you're in Miami, right?
In Miami. Let's go.
Welcome to Miami. I love it. And tell me a little bit about your podcast, and tell me, because all you guys got to follow Ian. Okay. He's got a great podcast. So tell me a little bit about your podcast and what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah. So the main excitement is cigars.com. So if you guys want to check it out, it's cigars.com, SIGARS.com. So cigars with an S. And essentially what we do is B2B custom cigars for events and big type of corporate stuff. So we're like the leader in creating a custom cigar for anything that you can think of. And we love it. It's really exciting. So like, for example, like these are examples of some different partnerships we've done. This is with one called Undaunted Life. And basically every time someone buys this cigar, we donate money to the Tim Tebow Foundation to fight child trafficking. And then like we have partnerships with Folds of Honor, like they're the largest military nonprofit in the world. So every time someone buys the Folds of Honor cigar, we donate $3 to the families of first responders and victims of fallen soldiers. So families of fallen soldiers, excuse me. So it's been really fulfilling because, a cigar is one of the most typical standard type of things. But generally speaking, what I really enjoy about cigars, and I don't smoke like cigars every day. When people think that I own a cigar company, I just smoke cigars. It's like far from the fact, maybe once or twice a week. But I love how in today's society, we're always so like up in our phones, we're always so busy. Like I'm a squirrel mind for sure. The ADD is popping at all times. But when I light up a stogie with a friend, like I'm just locked in, I'm connected, I can de-stress, I can relax. But, every vice comes with side effects. So everyone needs to put their big girl and boy pants on and make decisions for themselves. But cigars.com has been such a blessing in my life.
And so like, I want to talk about that a little bit. And I got to tell you, like one of my husband's favorite things to do at the beach down here is light up a cigar and just like take an hour, like just take an hour, look at the waves, do some thinking. And here's the thing. And I really believe that this is necessary moving forward. There's so much competition in the world. I think having a purpose-driven business, right? Like people think about entrepreneurship or people that make a lot of money and they're like, oh, you're in it for the money. And a lot of the times it couldn't be farther for the truth. Like the money is what allows us to live the lifestyle that we want, allows us to connect and build bigger business. But the purpose behind it, and the fact that you just shared that about those two specific brands of cigar that you've been putting out, like that means something to people. Like I would buy from you versus buying from somebody else just for that reason.
Well, I appreciate that. And I like what you said about the purpose driven, because once you get your raw needs covered as a human, you have a house, you have a car, you can take your girlfriend out for, dinner, you can do all like the things you need to do in life, right? You realize that sometimes just money doesn't motivate you. That's the issue. It's like you could go work for this company, make $500,000 a year, but that year would be a blur and your life would suck and you'd wake up feeling like shit. So the idea is that finding something you can do that also has the upside of being a net positive for your life, not just for your money. So like for cigars, the thing that we originally even started the whole business because I was sitting there watching the UFC fights. I don't know if you've heard of the Ultimate Fighting Club. Yeah.
Of course, my husband is all about it.
We love it. I'm addicted. So my partner Matt was an NFL and UFC sports agent. So I'd go to his house, we'd smoke a stogie, drink a little whiskey, like just feeling all manly,
boy
whatever.
Things.
And one time we're doing it and we're talking about how both of our dads have worked the same jobs for 32 years and they're about to retire this year. And they live in upstate New York. Now that was the normal back then. Like today, that's insane, right? Like, today's livelihood, people switch jobs every year and a half, 2 years. But we were thinking about like, what's a business we can do that we can get our dads to move down to Florida with us and work with us? And it literally, we were smoking. We're like, why not cigars? Like historically, cigars have been so boring, that's like the same label, the same wrapper. So we just take pride in having a unique business model. And that's something that I love talking to you about because you always have such a unique perspective on helping coaching entrepreneurs and businesses to think outside the box and think creatively. And Ryan's awesome, by the way. I can't wait to see him on the cruise coming up.
And it's so interesting. And it's funny how we learn these lessons through our lives by examples that are set. And one of the things that I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about is like you were a role model for your parents. My dad did the same thing. My dad worked a job to pay the bills. We never had issues with money. We always had enough. We had our house paid off, which I didn't realize how amazing that was when I was in high school, like that we had a paid off house. He worked really, really hard. He'd work overtime. He'd be gone for holidays, or he'd be out at 3:00 in the morning. He was a lineman, so he worked for BC Hydro. And I always heard him complain about his job. And he did it for 35 years, like 35 years of like going to a job that you don't really want to be at. You don't really like the people you work with. You just do it for a paycheck. And to me, we're set up in the system where, okay, get good grades. You're like, told by your parents, get good grades in high school so that you can go to university, and then go to university and get a really good paying job, because when you get a good paying job, you've got security, right? Which like, I think we've seen over the last couple of years is not necessarily true. There's risk to everything. And personally, I'd rather be in charge of my risk. I'd rather be in charge of how much money I make versus putting that in somebody else's hands where I could walk in and be handed a slip of paper and lose my job that day. And so it was really interesting to watch this kind of all unfold with my dad. And I look at what he has done for our family, and I'm forever grateful for that. But I was like, there's got to be a better way. Like we just like work out the rest of our life until we retire, and then we live on a fixed income. Like that sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. I want to live now. And the truth is that like we just talked a little bit about Jesse Lee, who is 35 years old. Like tomorrow is not guaranteed. We don't know about our health in our later life. We don't, and I'm going to, give my condolences. And I know you've lost your mother and you've gone through this grieving process, and you realize you always think you have more time. You always think that. Everybody thinks that, right? And so why not live today like tomorrow isn't promised? Why not go out there and serve people in a way that makes you happy and live a beautiful lifestyle? You know, I didn't want to work myself into the ground. I didn't want to work 80 hours a week. I wanted to work a few hours a day and then spend the rest of the time raising my daughter, and now soon to raise my son, because I truly felt called to raise, you know, kids that were global thinkers, that question everything, that were problem solvers, that you know, go out and create something of meaning in this world. And the significance of that, I think, over the next little while, as AI starts to take over and whatnot, is like who we are, the gifts that we have, the uniqueness that we are. That's really important, because all of these jobs are going to be taken over. And so you have to start thinking about, who do you want to be? What's the legacy you want to leave? How do you want to help people? How do you want to make people happy? Right. And that's all a part and parcel with what you do every day, as opposed to going to a job, clocking in and clocking out, having dinner and doing it all over again the next day.
Totally. It's so crazy, the whole thing that happened with Jessie. I mean, back in 2016, I remember I was at her wedding in Jamaica and I actually filmed her wedding video. And
Wow.
so I had like a season where I really got to know her, and I wasn't super connected with her the past few years, but I've seen her rise. And it's interesting to see the meteor impact that's happening throughout all these people, about seeing someone that took a chance. And I know her personally, and she's the type of person, she was very polarizing. You either loved her or hated her, and she just didn't give an F. She kept it real. She pursued, and no matter what, like, she's an absolute legend. She kept it real. Like what more can you ask for in a person, to insect being authentically you? And she had a gift for doing that. So one thing that you mentioned, it's like, what does that teach us? You know, got to live in the moment, got to take action. But I think a lot of people still hear that and they just like, what does that even mean? Like, what are you going to do? Just quit your job and move to Cabo? Like, a lot of people think that that's
Maybe.
probably not going to work for them right now. But I think like the biggest thing to think about is just taking action in everything you do. Like, the reason I think everyone needs a dog, you know, a little pivot, is a dog forces you to stop thinking about yourself, and it forces you to think about the dog. And you're always taking action. Dog needs to go to the pee, you go walk the dog, go pee. You know, dog needs to go here, you go take the dog. You know, a lot of people don't treat their lives like they treat their dog. You know, they don't feed their dog like they feed their business. You know, it's
Totally.
like if every single day you just acted on ambition, before you know it, you'll be exactly who you want to be. You just need to like do something every day. It's also great with like when you live in a home, putting together a house is a lot of work. But if you do something every day, you move a couple things every day, before you know it, you build a home. And that's the same concept with your business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'm going to take that one step further, because, you know, my dog, my original dog with Ryan, you know, Stella, she was our baby. Like, we planned vacation. We stopped flying and we drove from Canada to Mexico so Stella could come with us. Like, we totally rearranged our lives around her. And then here's the other thing that happens when you have children, if you have children and you're blessed enough to have children, and that's a choice that you make. There's this thing in front of you that is mimicking everything that you do, and all of a sudden, like, who you used to be isn't good enough, because you want them to be better than you have like this sense of evolution, right? And so like all of these little bad habits that you have, you're like, oh, I can't do, my dog won't tell anybody, but my daughter will. Right? And so like all of these little habits come into place, and you're just like, wow, like I need to become a better human. You know, like a really great example is like people that gossip all the time and then their kids start gossiping. It's because they saw you do it first, right? They saw how you treat other people. If you're not nice to the wait staff, if you're not nice to the gardener, then they're going to be rude and disrespectful to those people too. And so, and not to say that that was a part of our life, like we always had good values, but you start to focus a lot more on being a better human every day. And again, that applies to business, is that like we don't all walk into business and it's sunshine and rainbows and we just crush it. Like there's a lot of really difficult things that you have to overcome and challenges. And part of the reason that I bring that up is because entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, but it is for those that have a vision and a drive for their life. It's for those people that want to make an impact and want to make people feel good. And they're committed to that no matter what the challenge comes in the middle. And I love that you've taken something. And like, I really love that you said, okay, look, we're trying to figure out a way to get our dads to move. And like, what could we do to get them involved in our lives? Like, that's actually such a beautiful gift. That's such a beautiful thing to think about. And so you consciously created a business that would bring family in, right? And so I got to tell you a really funny story, and then I want to hear a little bit more about that. Is that we were about to tell people that we were pregnant, and this is this is how you know that you have a mini me, okay? Because I'm constantly thinking about different ways. I'm teaching her how to make money. I'm teaching her how to build relationships, like go make friends and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, okay, Izzy, like, I think I'm ready to tell people that we're going to have a baby. Like, I think, and she's like, okay. And I was like, so maybe we take this picture. Would you mind taking this picture with me? And we'll put it up like this. And she goes, yeah, but how are we going to make money? And I was like, oh my God, okay, so now we need to like course correct that it's not always about making money, right? It's not always about coming up with business ideas, but like actually there's like a bonding and a relationship. And like when people see your picture and see that, they're going to celebrate you. And that's going to feel really good. And guess what else? You're going to give people hope. People that have been waiting years and years and years to have another baby, or years and years to have their first baby, you're going to give them hope. And that's going to make them feel good and loved inside. And she started to understand the concept a little bit more, but it's such a gift to be able to pass that on or give that gift to other people and have conversations that are just bigger than how was your day at work, right? So tell me a little bit more about the cigar business. I want to hear like why, like I know why you came up with the concept, but like you had no background other than smoking cigars. You had no background in doing this. So like, how did you create this business out of nothing?
First of all, I love that story you just mentioned with your kid. Like that's hilarious. Like I always think back, like I was such a little shit when I grew up. Like I never helped around the house. Like I was very just like doing dishes was like the worst thing ever. But now like having my own home, I'm like maniac, like on the dishes, like this place is dialed, you know? So it's like somehow I don't have children, you know, I'm not blessed at that stage yet.
Yeah.
Definitely one day maybe, but you know, I feel like teaching a kid ownership has to be some sort of thing. Cause if you buy it, you're going to take care of it. But if it's someone else's, you just don't take care of it the same. Y'all ever stayed at a hotel room? You know,
Yeah.
it's not the same. But yeah, I mean, the business, your question specifically is about the business. I mean, it was like, I had no plan doing business with Matt specifically. So that was like such an amazing thing in my life because I've known this guy, Matt, for my entire life since I was like 9 years old. He was my brother's age. And then we ended up becoming better friends. And I've always respected him. And we were always just buddies. Like we never talked about running a business or anything. And it just happened so beautifully. And I mean, this is like my 6th business I've tried, right? And it just happens so organically and it doesn't feel like work because I have an accountability partner in him where I don't want to fail because it's not just failing me, it's failing him. And a lot of the times I've always been trying to do businesses by myself. And I've actually learned that I'm better when I team up with someone, in this case with Matt, because it's allows you to take a breath when someone else jumps in. It's kind of like a marriage, right? Like a business is like a marriage, you know, and there can't be any ego. It can't be any of this like discreet, like, I don't know the right word, discern for what the other person's doing. It's just taking action and stepping in. And that's what we did. Our first deal, we literally, this is kind of a crazy story, but basically Matt buys domain names of athletes. He's done it his whole life and he holds them. And then one day those athletes hit him up and ask him to buy the domain name for a lot more money, right? Smart. He's been doing it forever. Anyways, there was a top athlete that was in the UFC that had reached out to him to buy the domain name. And Matt, I mean, we had recently just started the company. He said, hey, how about this? How about we give it to you for free, but you do a branded partnership with us with our company, cigars.com. He goes, no way. That's awesome. So we had no idea how to make a label. We had no idea where to get cigars, and we had to deliver in 3 days, you know, because he was fighting in Madison Square Garden in a week. So we're like, shit. And we just made it happen. You know, we threw some things together, and it goes back to the whole thing is B- work changes lives. right? It's not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to just get something out and see what happens. And if you just improve the business 1% every day, the website 1%, the structure, the accounting, you just don't try to put so much burden on yourself. You start to build something. You know what I mean? And I think that's been a big trick is whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, I tell myself, number one, I need to be here in 10 years. Like businesses take, really big businesses take a lot of time to grow, like 5+ years. And I learned that with TrueFace. You know, we were one of the last facial recognition companies alive in the cohort of companies that started. And that was a big reason of our success because we lasted. So if you can last, then you can win. And winning and lasting takes personal time. Make sure you're spending time for yourself and all those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that most people, like we're in a society where it's instant gratification. So most people want that success right away. And they're like, oh, I didn't get it in 6 months, or I didn't get it in a year. I mean, it comes with direct sales too, right? People are like, oh, I'm not cut out for this, or they quit and they move on to something else because they think it's going to be better. But really it's about who you become in the process, right? And I love that you shared it's your sixth business. I've had multiple businesses over my career. And it doesn't mean that we've failed. It's that we've learned every single time how to evolve. I think that's how people create wealth, how they create a legacy. And I love that you talked about having a partnership. I'm like, hey, wait a second. Like I pay tens of thousands of dollars every year to have accountability coaches and like have people that are like moving me through that. Why do we not have a business partner that we're making money together instead of me spending it all the time? I was like, that's so brilliant. And especially because you guys have known each other for a long time and it's something that you both bond over, right? Like what a brilliant idea. And talk a little bit about what's come from that. Like what are the opportunities that you've had because I know that you've partnered with some pretty big names. I know that you've got a lot of support from people for your business. So like how did that all evolve? Again, I know it's a long-term process. I know it didn't happen overnight, right? But those relationships that you've built, the networking that you've done, right? Like your network is your net worth, right?
Yeah, like this is a great example. So back when I started a podcast called The Damn Good Day Show. It was actually called Len Jones Party of Two when I started it. And that was a long time ago, but you got to start. And my goal was to meet really interesting people, to build my brand and explore all the things that I found most interesting. That's literally why I started the podcast. Throughout that journey, I met this guy named Peter Taunton. Peter Taunton is the CEO and founder of Snap Fitness. I met Peter because I DM'd this girl named Jen Gottlieb on Instagram. She's now like one of like the top PR public speakers. She's amazing. She owns Super Connected Media. I got Jen on my podcast while I was in Santa Monica. Jen was like, oh my God, I love your podcast so much. I want to start referring my clients to you. I'm like, hell yeah. So she starts sending me her clients and seeing if I want them to be on my show. One of them was Peter. So I do this podcast with Peter. And then from there, I moved to Miami 8 months later. Turns out Peter lived in Miami. I shoot Peter a message. Hey, Peter, do you want to grab a drink? And then we meet up for a drink. And then me and Peter just become boys. Like we became just friends. Like we play pickleball together. Like that's my guy. And, Peter's become a huge life coach, mentor, business guru, but just generally good guy. Like he's the type of person that I look up to. Like I want to be like him. I like his character. I respect him. He's just like a really honorable, Minnesota man. And he told me, because I never ever asked him for business advice, really. Like I said, business mentor, but like I never asked for anything because that's just not who I am, But one day after a pickleball game, I brought up a little about what we were doing and I was telling him about what we were doing. And I was like, how can we get our product into more people's hands without, raising capital and scaling a huge sales team? And he mentioned, what about like promotional marketing services? So he says, if I were you, I would go home and I would find the 100 biggest promotional marketing service companies in the US and reach out to every single one of them to sell their product for you. So that night I went home, made a list of 100 people. And since then, that has been our key strategy that's been driving a ton of sales. Clients like HashiCorp, we just did a big deal with DirecTV, have come from these liaisons. And what these people do is they specialize in merchandise, like branded merch. So if you go to a cool event, your logo's everywhere. They put your logo on everything. So now we are a supplier for promotional marketing companies to then put cigars in people's hands. Now I have a sales team of like 50 to 100 people that are actively sending us deals. Now, I wish it would be more, but we're working our way up, but that's been a strategy to avoid ever raising money because everything's been bootstrapped. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And it really does speak to, you are the company you keep, your inner circle, the people that you surround yourself with. I know I had to learn that lesson the hard way growing up, that we always were taught to be polite and pleasant and be kind to everybody and make everything work for everybody. And it was so interesting. As I got older, I realized like the value of my time and the value of other people's time and how I spent my time really did matter. And the conversations that I had really, really mattered, right? Like it's different to go out on a Friday night with your girls and everyone's yap, drinking wine, right? To go and like sit down and have a conversation about business or like go get some exercise, go for a hike, go play pickleball, and then have a conversation with really high quality humans that you admire and you respect. And here's one thing that I got to point out is like, look, if you never started that podcast,
Exactly.
right? If you never tried to figure out how to get those, like some people would say, we have 3 days to get cigars, would be like, we can't do that. Right. But like you are an action taker and that's what it takes. It takes somebody that has the tenacity and the discipline to say, you know what, I'm going to figure it out. And I might not figure it out the first time. I might not figure it out the second time, but eventually as we go down this line, I'll be able to sort things out and I'll be able to work through it. And it's funny because I started doing, instead of doing podcast for me is I've only been doing a podcast for about 1.5 years, but I remember working with Ray Higdon and he talked about doing live videos and because I was like always trying to figure out content and bringing value to people and how it's going to help people. But I was like I want to talk to really interesting people. Like I want to hear their stories. I want to share their stories. Like that's so fascinating to me. And I also love the connection in that process. So I started off on Facebook interviewing people doing live videos. Right. And getting to know their story and getting little tidbits of information that I was like, oh, I should apply that. And when you learn how to take information and apply it almost immediately, it changes the course of your business. You have to have that little bit of courage, right? You have to have a little bit of like, oh, okay, I got to get it done. We'll figure it out. I'm going to call in the troops, right? If I need to. But I love that like you took action on that right away. And now look where your brand can go. And as you continue to expand the other relationships and connections that you'll make along the way.
Totally. And I love that you captured that. And I should have accumulated it, but you just did it perfectly. You couldn't have said it better. You just got to start. Like, you don't know where these things are going. A lot of times people need to, like, if you're selling a gingerbread house, you start tomorrow and you sell them a gingerbread house. You don't need to do that. Life is about relationships. Everything's about relationships. And people with money, they only care about relationships. Yeah. So you need to really work on your personal philosophy as a person and become someone that people of value will want to value. Like, would you hang out with you if you were that person? And sometimes the people that you think are high value aren't. Like, you meet them.
Oh, good lesson.
They're just like, they might have it all, but they don't. Like, they're not, it's not the vibe, So ideally you want to surround yourself in the vibe. You find people that are grooving, that are working, that are pushing you up, that don't get jealous if you're winning. You need to find people that celebrate you and celebrate your friends and celebrate that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I learned that lesson, as I was growing up and had people that were my friends because it was convenient for a while. I could give them something or I could do something for them. And I love that lesson. I don't know. I don't know if you came for money. I didn't come for money, right? So whenever I saw somebody that had made millions, I always put them on a pedestal. And I was like, wow, this human is incredible. Like, I can't believe that they were able to. And so as I matured in business, I was like, oh, not every human that has done that is actually somebody that should be on a pedestal. And actually, nobody should be on a pedestal because we're all human beings. And how you brought that forward, right? Who you become matters, like who you are and what you contribute to other people's lives. And just because somebody has more money than you or has more fame or fortune or success doesn't mean that you won't add value to their life in a certain way, right? And so I'm constantly thinking about those things. And same with podcasts, right? Like, how can I be of service to you? How can I support your business? How can I put you in front of my audience? And the same goes when I'm a guest. Like, we have to edify each other. We have to do the things that help bring people together because really, we're all on the same mission, right? We're all on the same mission of like bringing joy and having a good time. And like, hey, you know what? You can do this too. And so many people count themselves out before they even get started. you
Yeah.
know?
And to take that full circle back to network marketing, I think I learned that in network marketing. Because
Yeah,
like when you're in the audience and you look at these people on stage, you're like, oh my God, like if I just get 250K a year, my life is good. Like
totally.
you just so think all your problems will go away if you hit that. Like I remember thinking that all the time. But then you actually meet those people that are making the big money and you realize they're kind of crazy, you know?
Yeah.
They don't have their shit together either.
No.
When you meet successful people that don't have it all together, then you realize we're all just a bunch of people running around the planet trying to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Totally. And the other thing is, like, they may be a step ahead of you, or they might have done something different. And like, we don't know what the story is behind the scenes. Sometimes people walk into network marketing and they get real lucky. They get real lucky with a couple of people on their team. Maybe they didn't even enroll them. And now they're making all this money and they're like pitched as a leader and they have no idea how they got there. And I remember, and I'm going to be really transparent about this. Okay. I remember going into my first business in network marketing, and my first year I made $100,000 or plus $100,000, whatever it was. And that was more money than I'd ever made before. Like, I was just coming around to the concept that I was capable of that. And I remember thinking, okay, so I'm doing this right now, but I don't know how I'm doing it. Like, I had no idea how I actually got there. There were no systems. There was no like duplication. There was no nothing. And I was like, and you go through this like self-sabotage because it's imposter syndrome, right? And what I've learned over time is if I feel that way, if I ever feel like, oh, I don't know enough to be here, okay, that's a sign, that's a little light bulb moment that I need to go and learn more about that subject so I do become an expert. And that's the opportunity that everybody has that sometimes I think that we forget, right? That like, just because you had zero experience in making cigars or selling cigars doesn't mean that you can't go out and start an incredible business.
Yeah. And people always, I love that you said that because everyone tells you you can't do it. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, you can't listen to that stuff though, right?
Like I remember we were trying to like figure out how to make cigar labels, and we had this guy who was making these cigar labels, and he was like this old, really like awesome Cuban guy with like this store, and he had like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of labels, and he was showing me how he puts the label on, and there's like no adhesive. I'm like, so how do you put the adhesive on? He's like, you will use this like sticky like glue type stuff. I'm like, you have to put glue on your hand to put the adhesive? He goes, yeah. I'm like, there isn't just like an
Adhesive on the
that you can do. He goes, and he looks at me, he's like, are you crazy, kid? Like, no, that doesn't, what? So now we figured out a process to manufacture labels with an adhesive. Who would have thought, So you just don't know what you don't know. And
yeah.
one of the biggest rules of thumb is only take advice from people that have what you want,
Yes.
only take advice from people that are the energy, the vibe, the family, the culture that you respect. Keep your ears open always, because the birds can, chirp up some good stuff. But when it comes to like deep gut advice, like follow the people that have what you want, because most 99 times they're going to just lift you up and they're going to teach you something. They're not going to put you down.
Yeah, and be an observer, right? Like, that's one of the reasons that a lot of people say, well, you put it, like, even my family's like, you are too transparent on Facebook. Like, you put too much stuff out there. And I was like, no, I want to show people who I am vulnerably and show them what my life looks like. I want to show them because maybe they want this life too. Maybe they don't, and that's totally fine. But I always get the same advice, like, don't ever take advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with, because everybody has an opinion. Family member, friends, even if you hire people, they might have an opinion, but you really do have to go with that and hone that gut instinct, that intuition, which more recently I've learned is like the voice of the Holy Spirit. I'm just like, this is what has been coming through me. This is what has been happening. And it was so funny because I had this conversation with my grandmother, who's 94 now. And she just like, she never really understood, like I think she worked like 2 months in her whole life because that was just the generation, right? She raised kids, and my grandfather worked, and you didn't need two parents working at the time. And she's like, I never understood where you got your drive from. And it came innately from inside of me, but I had to learn how to trust it as opposed to question it all the time. right? Like a lot of us second guess and like, is that really right? Or like we start to listen to people that are talking to us on the side and like, that's never going to work. Like, especially with network marketing, that's never going to work. Nobody ever makes money doing that. I'm like, well, then how come I made money doing that? Like, I don't know about everyone, but here's how you do it. Right. So what I realized in the process is that having critical conversations, having like really value, like, sitting down with a cigar and having a great chat with a friend, like that is so valuable. And sometimes people look at it like, I can only do business activities. And it's like, no, you actually come out with some of your greatest ideas through conversations, having fun with other human beings and bonding with them in the process, right?
Totally, totally, totally. And it changes so much too. There's billions of people in the world. You're not, even if you become Ed Milet, like everyone's not going to know you. You become Eric Worre, everyone's not going to know you. You become
Totally.
The Rock, everyone's not going to know you.
Well, no.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe The Rock. Maybe The
I
Rock.
I laugh because that is by far my daughter's favorite actor.
I mean,
She's
legend.
obsessed. She's
Obsessed.
obsessed. And so I'll have to tell you this funny story. When she turned 5, she woke up on the morning of her birthday, and I said, "Okay, what do you want to do today? Like, we've got a couple of presents that we're going to give you. What do you want to do today?" She's like, "I'm going to go see The Rock." She calls him, by the way, she calls him Hank because the first movie that she ever watched with him in it was Journey 2, and his name was Hank in the movie. His character was Hank. It's like, I want to go see Hank. And I'm like, well, Hank probably is in Hawaii or LA or, somewhere on site filming a movie. Well, can't we just get on a plane? And, I bring this story up because that's how kids think. There are no limits. And like, yeah, if we had the money, we could just get on a plane. And if we had the network, we could just probably bring you in front of Hank, The Rock, right? We could just do those things. But it just like made me think of like the innocence that's behind that so often we lose that ability to dream bigger, the ability to like, hey, we'll figure it out. Like, it does, what the details don't matter. We'll just figure it out. And that's exactly what you've done in your career and how you've evolved. And I really believe that network marketing has a really great base for business. You're taught leadership. You have to learn how to lead, and you have to learn how to communicate and be likable, because not everybody is. But it's a volunteer army, right? It's not like you're in
Yeah.
a position of authority or people have to, listen to you because they're getting paid at a job. Like, you really do have to earn people's trust and their respect for them to want to work with you. And that happens over time. Like, we all start off somewhere down here in a mess of, we're so self-absorbed that we don't think about other people because that's, teenage years and moving into who we become. But then there's this opportunity to evolve and change and become somebody of purpose, right? As somebody of impact, somebody that actually truly cares about other humans. And that's, I honestly believe, like, where the best business practices come from, and like some of the best businesses in the world come from.
Yeah, it's tough to think about the drive because it's like you say, some people want to be entrepreneurs, some people don't. It's like, how does your brain work? For me, like, I'm drinking tea right now. There's honey in the tea. There's this spearmint thing in the tea. Like, I'm curious now, like, what goes into tea? Like, where does tea come from? Like, what's good with tea? Like, can I get tea at a wholesale price? Because if I get tea at wholesale, I won't have to like spend all this money. And why is everyone else drinking this shitty tea that I now found out there's like some harmful thing? And now I know something someone else doesn't know because I was curious to find out about this tea. The only difference between like an entrepreneur is someone that's curious. They're like super curious and they just look stuff up. They just take some sort of calculated, curious action. And I think too much in life, people get so it's hard. Imagine being like a single mom. Like, you have no time. You work 9 to 5, you go home, you take care of the kids. Maybe you have 30 minutes, and those 30 minutes, you're going to watch some Netflix and you're going to chill. So it's like really finding something, thinking about where you want to, like, what your lifestyle wants to be. Like, when I think about cigars, it's like, me loving cigars is one of the least reasons why I build a cigar company. What I love about cigars is it's horizontal. Doctors like cigars, though they probably won't recommend it. Like, gardeners like cigars, farmers like cigars, CEOs like cigars, some guy in Bali likes cigars. It
Totally.
allows me a lifestyle where I get to constantly meet such an assortment of humans. And I'm a sales guy. I'm in sales, right? Like, we're all in sales. Every single person is in sales, whether you like it or not. If you don't think you are, you just sold yourself on why you're not. But like, if you sell something that is in line with the things you like to do, if you like to spearfish, figure out a way to be in that world. If you like to do this, figure out a way to be in that world. You'll be more happy. It's not easy. It's not easy. Like all the time, we go on these Facebook lives, like me and Christina right now, and like sounds like we really have our shit figured out, right? Because like the hype up. But don't get me wrong, like every day I ask myself, what am I doing? Like I don't have all right, let's go. Like I'm still working on that. I'm a work in progress. But I do know that if I were to look at myself 3 years ago and I were to say, I'd be like, hell yeah, that's my boy right there. You know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
sometimes something I struggle with, and I'm curious what you think, is I give the best advice to my friends. Like I am the best. You want relationship advice? Come to me. You want business advice? Come to me. But when it comes to giving advice to myself, let me tell you, sometimes I don't listen to it. And I don't know if that's something that you've ever run into.
Absolutely. We all have our weaknesses. We all have those things that we conveniently ignore because they're difficult for us to deal with, or there's something that we need to move through. And so a couple of things, that are really helpful when it comes to that is hiring people that are smarter than you in certain areas that you're not smart in. Right? Having a good
What a
team of people
concept.
around
What
you.
a concept.
And you have to drop your ego at the door and be like, no, I suck at that. Like, I'm really, because it's really interesting. I'm a salesperson. Like my dad, when I was a kid, he's like, you could sell ice to Eskimos like that. That was like such a common phrase, but he's like, you've always been in sales. Like that's always who you've been. But when it comes to selling my stuff and what I'm creating, I know that I give good ideas. I know that I'm great at what I do, but like closing people on my stuff is very difficult for me. And so sometimes you have to like think outside the box and like you said, get curious about like, hey, where could we do things better? And I think it is a constant evolution of evaluating what's going on. And sometimes we have to be hit over the head with it multiple times before we actually change, usually in our own lives. But it's easy when you have people in your life, that you can have these bigger conversations with and that hold you accountable to them, right? Like a business partner or mentor or coach or whatever it is. Because in the process, you do get better. You just don't see the daily get better. Like, people think, oh man, that was so cool. Like you moved to Cabo. That's amazing. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's amazing. But do you know what we had to give up to do that? Do you know what
Amazon Prime.
Actually, Amazon Prime is like the only thing that delivers here. Nothing
Oh,
else
that's
does. You
cool.
can't like
That's
you couldn't
legit.
send me cigars here. I wouldn't get them. Some Mexican in the mailroom would get them, right? So like I know that it's one of those things that like you have to go through these hard times to strengthen yourself, to strengthen your character, to go through those. And it does not happen overnight. But when you look back, like same with you, right? Like if I look back 5 years from now and see the life that we created here, and often like I even take it for granted. Do you sometimes take what you get to do every single day for granted?
Oh yeah. Like
Right?
if I were to just take a step back and be like, you have no reason to be all like anxious and anxiety. Like you have everything you need. Like if
Oh, good. We both do that.
I need to I tell myself that sometimes, but it's like you have to get good at it. You have to get good at like training your brain to remind yourself like you're creating problems for yourself. And it's like
That's a good way to look at it.
like so many of us do that all the time. I do that all the time. Like you are making a big deal of something that's not a big deal. Like that person isn't thinking about you the way you think they're thinking about you. Like it's not. Like people don't care about you in the nicest way. Just be more free flowing, be more go with the flow. And I'm trying to get better at that, because I'm a grinder and deep down I get so upset that I'm not like the best I can be. I get nervous,
Already,
like,
right?
like one day I just want to be like, I could be a top podcaster, like, but I gotta keep doing podcasts if I'm gonna do it. It's like you gotta just keep going. And I love the story of like Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy. It took him 10 years before he like built that into anything. So you're not gonna think about building a business and think about like not making a lot of money for a very long time. What is something you can do for a very long time and not make money on and not quit?
Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it. And I think it's so interesting. Again, we go back to like this instant gratification culture, that we want results right now. And like, by the way, we're in the middle of a recession in this crazy time in the world that people are like, why is my business not working the same? But in the same sense, it's like if we were seeking solutions to the problems that were currently happening right now, then we would be able to move forward in business. And it is reflecting on the everyday. It's reflecting on the little things every day gratitude. My gratitude practice has changed everything, right? And sometimes I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking about business, or I'm thinking about something I have to do, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that, but I got to do that later. And I look and I'm like, it's a beautiful sunny day. The palm trees are blowing in the wind. I'm like, people come here to vacation, and you get to live here every single day and experience life here every single day. You go to the beach. I went to the beach this morning with my dog and just sat there for 30 minutes and had a conversation with myself, and just like, man, if we only focused on the things that we were grateful for, and then went into all the things that maybe we were hard on ourselves about, or wish we had done better, or wish that we were different, then that basis of gratitude would change the rest of the outcomes of the day, and sometimes
Totally.
the week, sometimes the year, sometimes 10 years. And if you can bring that gratitude along with you on the little steps, it's easier to look back in retrospect and say, oh man, look who I've become in the process, because you don't get to see that day to day.
Totally. I mean, like, I remember when I was living in San Francisco. I was working for the startup. I was making $1,500 a month. My rent was $1,650. So I hated that chapter of my life. Like, it was sick because I went to this 500 startup program and I met all these awesome entrepreneurs, but I was living in a hostel for like the first half. And it was tough, and but at the same time, I realized like I needed to make a big change. So that's when I decided to get up and move to Medellin, Colombia. And I did that for 7 months. And like in that process, I just saw more of the world that I didn't see. I think a lot of the issues that people are upset about, and I think I don't really talk about politics because I don't know enough. And I always just sound like an idiot. And nor do I ever want to like put myself in a bucket where everyone gets angry at me. But I have found that appreciation and gratitude is everything. And I think that when you live in a country where you have like a lot of access to a lot of resources, you just don't appreciate it the same, which is another reason why I love Miami, because there's so much culture here from people from all over the world. And like, I love Spanish culture. Like, I love the family ties.
Me too.
Like when their parents get old, they don't put them in a nursing home. Like, that's the vibe here. But in there, it's like in many other cultures, it's like, no, like grandpa's 98, like he's a statue, but he's over there in the corner. You know what I mean? It's like their family is so important. And I think that there's not enough of that in our culture, especially when you're comparing yourself to everyone on Instagram and you're always comparing. There's options everywhere. There's like a million girls you can date, so you can't pick one. There's a million dudes. Like, it's tough because this isn't how we were supposed to live. We were supposed to be like straight hunters and gatherers with our tribe, going out hunting, chilling by the fire, relaxing. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think that the root of happiness is perspective. And the only way to get perspective is to travel and put yourself in uncomfortable positions.
Always. And it's so interesting that you say that, because we, Brian and I were talking about it before we moved down here. And, Izzy had everything that she always needed. I'm going to admit that she was totally spoiled, and it was our fault. And I wanted her to see how other people lived. I wanted her to see what life was like for others, so that she would appreciate what she had, but also show her, like, when we sold our house up there and we put stuff in storage, we went home last summer and went through that entire storage container and got rid of 90% of our things. 90%. And it makes you realize stuff is just stuff. It's insignificant. If it means something to you and it makes you feel good, it's a memory, then great, but it's just stuff. And we had to show her that process, that if you have family around you, if your values and your belief systems are being supported and met, right? And you can create the life that you want. You have to be intentional about it, because often people get into this rut of schedule, and like day in, day out, it looks the same. And they don't often think, like, we hear this all the time. People plan better for a vacation once a year than they plan their finances or the rest of their life. Totally. And it's true, right? They like know what restaurant they're going to go to. They know the clothes that they're going to bring. They know what activities they're going to do. And it's like, if you planned your life that way with excitement and gumption and discipline, then all of a sudden things will change for you. And I will get a little bit political because I do sometimes.
Yeah, rock out.
We look at this whole motion of inclusion and diversity training, right? That everybody has to be equal. Everybody's got to go through this. We got to love everybody, whatever. Well, I was never raised in an environment where I didn't have love, compassion, respect for all. Like that is how, no matter who you are, no matter, unless you're an asshole, then I don't have to be around you, right? But like, no matter who you are, that's how we treat people, right? We treat people the way that we want to be treated. And I think that what's lost in all of this is that travel puts you in a position of like, you may not speak the same language. You might not understand cultures, but have to learn about them, right? Like what I said, happy Mexican Independence Day to a couple of different people here. They're like, thank you so much for embracing our culture. And I'm like, that's what we're here for. I think this is amazing. We get to learn all about what you do and why, something that's really funny is like Cinco de Mayo isn't really celebrated in Mexico, but celebrated everywhere else. It's only celebrated in this like small little community in Mexico, but it's been made like a hallmark, celebration the rest of the world. And it's like, or at least in North America. And it's so interesting because when you start to embrace that, when you start to embrace learning and openness, and my daughter can play with kids that don't speak the language. She can play with kids that are disabled. Like she's got kids in her class that are disabled. It doesn't matter to her. They're kids. Right? Like none of that matters. And if you don't expose them, or if you don't expose yourself to travel and what it's like around the world, then you're never going to have that perspective. And that perspective is what drives me every single day to help other people. Right? It's that thing that is like, it's constantly eating at me. It's constantly that thing that I'm like, hey, like if you just saw things a little bit differently, then you would be able to move forward this way, or you'd be able to make life so much easier.
Well, I would hire you if anyone's listening to this because you walk the walk, like that's badass. Like you moved to Cabo, you sold everything. You had a family, you had a dog, you had all the excuses.
We had everything.
Yeah, you had all the excuses and you picked it all up and changed. And that by itself, one of the most badass things ever. And you need to follow people that have what you want and do what you do and can guide you in that direction. And that's impressive. Like seriously, like you and Ryan are all stars.
I appreciate it. It takes a lot of courage, and not to say that we didn't grieve over the process, not to say, we had to leave all of our family behind. We moved specifically to Cabo because it was a 4-hour flight to Vancouver, and we know we could get home and they could come visit us. It'd be easy because we could have easily gone to Colombia, or we could have easily have gone to somewhere else, in the world, gone to Europe or wherever. And we chose here because we had strategic plans for our daughter to learn Spanish and be involved in the process down here and show her your life is what you make it. And, it does take courage. It does take bravery. It does take those things. But what if you don't do it? Like, what if you're constantly wondering, what if you get sick in 10 years and don't get to do that, Europe vacation or whatever it is, like, what if you don't ever get to go to Australia and maybe travel isn't your thing. Maybe you want to go skydiving. I don't know. But like, what if you never pursue that dream that you always had in your heart and you die with it in your heart? And that fear for me is so much bigger than doing something else that's scary,
Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's literally it. And there's so much there. There's so much to dissect. You go back to the Jesse Lee situation. It's like, You don't know. And you have to try. You have to give it a shot. You have to ask yourself cross off all the things that you need to do to happily die. Cross out all the things you need to do to feel like you can at least be comfortable with yourself. And guess what? You never will completely get there, but I think a big part of life is living with integrity and finding out what your integrity is. I know people that were raised with money who are some of like the best guys I know because their families were just integrity driven. I know people that are spoiled brats and they're so miserable. It's like, find out what you want and stop trying to get what other people want. Like, what do you actually want? Like, I always ask myself that all the time. I post on my Instagram, like, on this episode of things I don't need,
Totally. Oh my God, Ian. Well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for being here today. If you guys haven't already followed him while listening, go check out his podcast, Damn Good Day. Will you remind me? I think it's just cigars.com, right? For custom cigars. If you want to have, man, there's so many ways that you could use that and spin that and celebrate
cigars.com with an
Beautiful.
S.
Love it. Ian, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to have to fly myself to Miami after this baby because I'd love to have a chat with you in your studio and see what you're up to there. And I think that my husband would probably like to bring home some cigars.
Well, hopefully I end up seeing you on this upcoming cruise.
hate to break it to you.
Possible? Ah, no. But in the future, then let's do it.
I was really, really, really sick for a little while. And I was like, the worst thing that I can think of is being really, really sick with a migraine and being stuck on a cruise. That was the worst thing I could think about. Seasick and not being able to take anything. So I actually am opting out this year, but I promise I'll see you next year. Okay.
Let's go. Well, Miami's a hot spot. You'll probably be here. But thank you so much for having me on. You're amazing. Second we met, we just vibed and connected. Thank you so much for letting me be a guest on your show. And keep doing the great work. What you're doing is working. And everyone listening to Christina, you guys are smart people.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Well, until next time, we'll see you on Freedom Motivated. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Freedom Motivated with your host, me, Christina Whiteley. We hope that the stories we've shared today have sparked a fire within you and ignited your passion for living life on your terms. Remember, true freedom lies in the choices we make and the actions we take. So go out there and embrace your journey. Take the leap of faith, believe in yourself, and never settle for less than what you deserve. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Freedom Motivated podcast and never miss out on our upcoming interviews with more incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders. Be bold, be brave, be disruptive. You are capable of things far beyond your wildest dreams if you just have the courage to go for it. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Until next time, may you always be driven by the desire for freedom and motivated to make your dreams a reality.